Came back again 73,414 years to Mount Neblina on the border of Venezuela and Brazil. Now, 71,933 BC, Lemuria is founded as a collective colony. Many of these races decide, okay, let's just pool our resources. And they move their Edens to a continent in the Pacific. Those nations were, those star nations were, the Lyrans, this is who founded Lemuria, Sirius A, Pleiades, races from Tegeta and Meropa, specifically. Those two star systems. Tegeta and Meropa. Ursa Minor, okay, this is the Lyran star system. And you have your cheat sheet, okay? Tells you where the races were from. Okay, we were all fascinated. Everybody's fascinated. Well, I'm not, but a lot of people are fascinated with the Pleiadians. Okay, so we'll leave that up there because we're going to talk about them in a little bit. And Butes, which is Nibiru. This is 71,933 BC. Okay, Lemuria is established as a collective colony. So now everybody's working together. Okay? Good sign. That's a good sign. Okay? It didn't last, however. 57,600 BC, Atlantis is founded. Now, somewhere between the establishment of Lemuria and the establishment of Atlantis, the Pleiadians get pissed off and they leave. Okay? A misunderstanding. They come back. They come back to the star system. And Atlantis is founded 57,600 BC. It's the Pleiadians again, the Nibiru, Antarians, the Hyades, a group from Sagittarius, and the Andromedans make a guest appearance. Ta-da! Okay. Do I need to read those again? Yes. Okay. Atlantis, Pleiadians, Andromedans, Butes, which is Nibiru. You know, but you might as well know where they're from. Aldebaran, Antarians, Antarieans, the Hyades, which is right here, and Sagittarians. With the exception of Nibiru, all of these are O2s, okay, that established Atlantis.
All are O2 except which
O2 breathers, with the exception of Nibiru. Some of them, of the Nibiruan tribe, are oxygen breathers, okay, because they come from Sirius.
Two sons were Enki and Enlil. And Enki and Enlil were the brothers of East of Eden, which is the basis of the Arab-Israeli conflict today. And An's two sons had the same dad but a different mom. The dad was An-Tu, who was this regent on Sirius. The different mom was the fact that Enki's mother was a high-winged Draco, whose blood has not fallen. Sometimes the word for the winged Draco is called Siakar, and you'll see that in a few places in the literature. And it relates to the Christian word for cherubim. Okay? So at any rate, Enki's mom had winged DNA. And the winged DNA means if you're clairvoyant and you look, you see that the arc angle of magnetism leaving their heart appears to have wings. It's implosive. The bird tribes, the winged ones. So Enki had a mom that allowed him to learn the skill of ensouling DNA. Now, that's not a mystery to you now that we've spent 2 days, saying exactly what it means to ensoul DNA. Remember, how do you turn lightning into ball lightning? You teach the tornado to eat its own tail, right? Well, that's how you make ensouled DNA, and it's how you bring people back from the dead. So later when Enki's kids, which becomes the Jesus Tutankhamun story, you can understand why they only were able to ensoul DNA and bring people back from the dead. Whereas Enlil, mom was of the fallen DNA, so Enlil becomes the conservative brother who says, well, we got to follow the rules. And the Orion Empire, from which, see, the Orion Empire paid a huge investment for the artificial mining planetoid called Nibiru because they needed the gold powder desperately. Sitchin says they were using the gold to repair the atmosphere of the home planet, which is true, but it's a cover story. The fact is they were eating the gold. And they were eating the gold because they were addicted to the gold powder. It was the only way they could speed up their DNA after they fell, the Nephilim, right? And the story we're told is that here, on these planetoids, particularly here, Rigelians, and we know Krishna, who we think is probably on Enki's side of the family, was blue. And we know the Andromedans are mostly blue. And we know that Enki was blue-black, Nubian, which usually means a higher copper content. And later, when we learn who Sarah the Egyptian was, the real Magdalene story, she was blue-black, because she's a granddaughter of Enki's Hermes. So we were learning now where that blue blood came from, which is here. Enki's mother, Rigelian, a blue blood, copper. Now, blue had one other meaning.
Rigel's the blue star.
The blue star, Katina.
You said that Enki's mother came from... That's what stars with the Draco.
Rigel is one of the stars in Orion.
Oh, Orion.
By that time, the Draco controlled
Draco.
control most of the stars in Orion were controlled.
Okay.
Tell me about Mars. What happened?
Okay. Mars, very, very interesting experience. It occurred, first of all, in October of 1996. I was visited by some entities who looked very human. And by the way, many of my experiences, I'm interacting with human-looking beings.
Okay.
There were about, I'd say 3 women that came into my room and escorted me out. Now, some of my travel is not always in a ship. Sometimes it's projection, astral projection, whereby my astral body is leaving the physical body behind. But I felt as though I was being astrally pulled out. And then what I believe occurs is I dematerialize and rematerialize physically in another location. So that's the impression I was having, actual experience I was having with the Mars experience. I was spiritually pulled out and then physically rematerialized once on the planet. But however, in this process, I went through what felt like a tunnel to get to. I didn't take a ship. I was thrust through a black tunnel, so to speak, similar to the afterlife experiences you've heard about and read about. So after going through that, I was suddenly found myself in a laboratory setting. And I was, again, rematerialized. I felt physical. I felt very much in that whole environment of physicality because I was being examined quite often I'm being examined in these experiences. Heart and lungs and chest and all of those things, blood pressure and all of those things. And so I found myself in a laboratory hospital-like setting, and I was interacting with beings that composed of all different races, Caucasian and African American, or not African, at least black anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
not African.
Anyway, I was being experimented on, and I decided I'm going to try to strike up a conversation with these entities, because that's what you do when you're meeting with people you don't know. You try to make small talk. So I thought about what on earth could I think to talk about to these beings. So I remembered that a rock had been found in I think it was Antarctica. And on this rock were small microorganisms that
Right. The meteorite.
Okay, yes. And that proved to our scientists, that was a big exciting news. And that proved to our scientists that life could have existed millions and millions of years ago. So I remember that story, and I decided to share it with this individual who was a Caucasian male who was examining me. So I shared this whole story with him. He didn't say very much. He didn't respond or react that it was, great, big, exciting news that I thought it was anyway. And he simply responded, "We are well aware of your findings." And that was it. It's almost like that's no big deal. And then when I thought about it, it may have looked a little bit ridiculous that I was sharing with him, we found a rock with microorganisms on it, which proved that life could have existed millions of years ago, when already I'm on the planet.
The Caucasian-looking alien beings are servants on these ships.
So do you think there are occupants on Mars right now?
Yes, I do. And I interacted with them. So that's what was occurring at this time. So this individual, he guided me to a computerized map on the wall. And he showed me terrain, mountains, and landscapes, and areas that were occupied. And he pointed one up, and I tried to remember the names of them. The only one I could commit to my memory was a place called U. Why U? And he was saying that basically it was a map like we have of Earth, except it was Mars. And yes, it's inhabited, and yes, there are people in this area, there's people in that area, there's named areas are named, and U was the only one I could recall or remember. And then I was, in that experience, my whole conversation was overheard by another individual who joined the conversation, and she was a black female. And she came out, and I really decided I couldn't comprehend this information. I couldn't really digest it. I wasn't certain how to react to the information that he told me after that, which was that Mars is predominantly black. And I couldn't comprehend that. I couldn't understand that. Mars is predominantly black. And so another woman enters the room who had overheard the conversation, and she reiterated, Mars is predominantly black. And again, I couldn't understand that. I couldn't understand why is she telling me this. What does that mean? I just basically wanted to keep changing the subject. But they were telling me that this planet was occupied predominantly by black people. And they looked at me as though, don't you know this? Don't you remember?
What do we look for when looking for signs of artificial structures or intelligently designed structures? What characteristics do they display that natural organic objects do not? What makes them different? We just don't think about it here on Earth. We're so used to seeing